Hi guys, my name is Abdul, and in this video I will be explaining about the TCP IP model and the OSI model. What is the TCP IP model and what is the OSI model, and when were they introduced and why they're being used. So let's get started. So I will get started with the TCP IP model. So TCP/IP. TCP/IP is a set of communication protocols that are used in the internet and any similar computer networks. TCP/IP protocol suite implements the internet architecture. So when we're using the internet or any device that is using internet, for example, when you're browsing from your phone or you're on your computer and you want to browse to google.com. Let's say, for example, this is your computer and this is the web server at Google, let's say, and you're opening this computer, you're browsing www.google.com. This communication from this sending computer to the receiving computer is using TCP IP model for the communication. So it's called TCP IP model because IP is the modern IP protocol is it's what's used in modern communication right now, IPv4 and IPv6, and the TCP is a protocol that is used for reliable communication. The TCP IP layer, it specifies how the data, like when you're browsing to google.com, this data would be from the sending computer, right? It would be logically, or it's like you're not going to be noticing that, but logically, that data on the sender computer would go through different protocols until it will get sent, and then at the receiving end, it would be also going through the same protocol back to the web server. So each protocol in this stack would be used for a certain function, right? So how the data is packetized and how the data is addressed, because there would be addresses that needed to be used in communication to identify the source and destination. So the addresses, a transport layer have addresses involved in it, and those addresses are called port numbers, right? And sorry about my writing, but just getting started with that. So the port number would be used, and for the network layer also there would be addressing used, which is the IP address. For data link, the addresses would be used would be the MAC address. So this is the TCP/IP model. It's used in the modern communication life. It's involve multiple protocols that each product, like a protocol stack, each protocol would be responsible for a function. And nowadays, all the computers, all the embedded devices, all the phones are communicating through the internet using the TCP/IP model. One was who developed, or it was like started in the 90s, 70, and it was developed by agency called ARPANET. So ARPANET is Advanced Research ARPA ARPANET. So ARPANET is, this is terrible, but ARPANET is Advanced Research Project Agency Network. So it was developed by the Department of Defense, and it's still used so far in the internet communication. Now you would be wondering then what is the OSI layer? So actually both of them were started in the in parallel in the 1970s. So the OSI layer also started in the 1970s, but it was introduced or developed by an organization called ISO, and the OSI layer is not used in the computer network communication or in the internet communication as the TCP IP layer. But the OSI layer is actually a theoretical representation or theoretical or conceptual model for describing the computer network communication. It's not used in the internet communication, as I said, but OSI layer, it helps standardize the hardware and standardize the software. So the hardware in terms, for example, let's say the router, switches, motherboards, the OSI would help in standardizing them. And it's used for understanding the network communication system. As you see the difference here, this one have 7 layers, this one have 5 layers. So it started actually the OSI layer when back in the days computer networks product would only be able to communicate with other products from the same brand. So for example, if you have IBM product and IBM product was only able to communicate with other IBM product. Oh god, this is terrible. Sorry about that. That was a huge problem. That was a pretty big problem because you would want to communicate between different products. The OSI layer helped in standardizing this communication or the network communication or the communication system. So most vendors nowadays, and back in days also, when they describe their product, they describe it in relation with the OSI model. So because standardization is an essential to communication and technology, right? So you would need a standard, and based on the standard, you would build your product. So regardless of the technology type, the vendor, and the model, with the OSI layer, it made sure that there is interoperability within the communication system, right? Those are the OSI layer and the TCP IP layers. Like I said, the only differences is difference is this one is not used. This one is used more than communication. This is more theoretical representation of the computer networks, and it helped in the standardization. Most vendors, when they build their product, they build it in relation to the OSI layers. This is mostly used. This is like used in end-to-end communication. It's protocol suite that implement the internet architecture. So the next video I would be explaining more about those protocol. I'll be explaining the protocols in respect to OSI models. I'll be going through physical, data link, network, transport, session, presentation, application. Also, as you see here, in TCP IP, those three were merged into the application layer. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video and got an idea about what is the OSI layer and what is the TCP IP layer. Stay tuned for my next video explaining the whole protocols and how they work in the network communication system.